Most of the relationships I've had have been Plutonian. We often think of adorably dark and deep romances like Morticia and Gomez Adams. But more frequently, it ends up being like Whitney Houston and Bobby Brown, both of whom were Plutonian. This is Saturn, girl. And we have another wacky transit happening. On July 12th, Venus, my mama, and our precious princess of pleasure will perfect an opposition to Pluto, our despot of domination and death. Let's look at the fun chart, shall we? You see my mommy here, Venus, at the very end of Cancer, and here's Pluto here at the very beginning of Aquarius. And let's go forward a day. Let's see mommy. And boom! You see, Venus is now opposite Pluto. I do have a content warning, though. You see, some of these Venus-Pluto aspects often correlate with sexual violence and violence against women. So please be advised that some of this content may trigger you. I'm a sexual assault survivor myself, so I feel you. And so many of my female friends and clients are as well. This is a reality we all have to face as women. And yes, that includes trans women. This takes all of us raising awareness and educating our children to stop it. In this video, we're going to talk about the meaning of Venus opposite Pluto and what it means for you and for us. But first of all, let's remember what Venus means in astrology. She's beauty, pleasure, attraction, and love. She's women, femininity, and how we relate to people. And yes, she's also sex. Pluto, on the other hand, though, is will, power, domination and possession, wealth and hoarding, hidden things, trauma, criminality, and our darker nature. Meanwhile, oppositions are when two planets are 180 degrees away from each other. So basically opposite in the zodiac, give or take 10 degrees or so. They are in the nature of Saturn and are the most difficult traditional aspect. Oppositions are prolonged conflicts and circumstances we can't get ourselves out of. When Venus and Pluto join each other in an opposition, we see some disturbing patterns. It's like our will is at odds with how we relate to people, to sex, relationships, and women in particular. This aspect often brings obsessive and intense relationships. In fact, we call those Plutonian relationships. Most of the relationships I've had have been Plutonian. We often think of adorably dark and deep romances like Morticia and Gomez Adams. But more frequently, it ends up being like Whitney Houston and Bobby Brown, both of whom were Plutonian. For those of you who've struggled with addiction, you'll understand this. You see, we grow deep roots into each other. We want to go to hell and back together. We want to share a heartbeat and feel our partner's blood coursing through our veins. Breaking up a Pluto relationship feels like withdrawals. It's agony. It's like having a piece of yourself ripped out from inside you. Pluto aspects in relationships often indicate jealousy, possessiveness, and codependent behavior, as well as exploitation, abuse, and sexual trauma. When this aspect appears in natal charts, we often see a dark and powerful aesthetic. It can be kind of gothy or project a facade of power. We also see power dynamics, especially kink. I had this aspect in two of my past DS relationships. Now, I don't like to discriminate against any particular placement, but the natives with this one have traumatized me quite a bit. Yes, they get jealous. Yes, they get possessive. Yes, they get codependent. And yes, I've been gaslit, manipulated, exploited, cheated on, used, and abused by partners with this placement. Pluto also rules wealth, so we often see people using money to manipulate others. I try not to hold grudges, but I won't lie. If I see this placement in a potential partner's chart, I'm gonna get triggered. I'm sorry. These are the kind of people who typically look at their own potential partners as prey. Sort of like the she-wolf, lurking in the bushes, stalking you. You must bear in mind, though, that Pluto is quite insecure. Like, do you remember the Hades and Persephone myth? He kidnapped her, but they eventually fell in love. But he was so paranoid and scared of losing her that he gave her pomegranate seeds which bound her to the underworld. He didn't have to do that. but he was consumed by his own fear. But what about some examples of people with Venus opposite Pluto in their natal charts? These people can be alluring or creepy, and they can be survivors or abusers. Take Kurt Cobain, for example. After his parents' divorce, his mother got in an abusive relationship rife with domestic violence. And young Kurt even witnessed a violent confrontation that left his mother with a broken arm. And both Kurt and his widow, Courtney Love, were quite Plutonian. In fact, so was their relationship. His Pluto was square her Venus. It was also an insanely intense and toxic relationship. And then we have Elvis Presley, who unbeknownst to all of his fans had an affinity for underage girls and even engaged in exploitation and abuse. And that's according to a 2014 biography by Joel Williamson titled Elvis Presley, A Southern Life. Then we have actor David Carradine, who famously played Bill in the Kill Bill series. But he was also famous for his deviant sexual behavior. In fact, it was one of his kinks that killed him. He died from autoerotic asphyxiation. Ariana Grande is another one. I mean, she has a song called The Boy Is Mine. If that isn't a Venus-Pluto kind of title, then I don't know what is. Ariana has had to endure her fair share of misogyny as well, especially given the fact that she was a Disney child star who grew into a pop diva who expresses sexuality through her music. And she's been objectified a lot. She even broke up with her ex, Big Sean, over a reference he made in a song to her billion-dollar pussy. I mean, I've been called that too. She's also had a pretty checkered relationship history. According to Us Weekly, Ariana has a penchant for getting into deep and intense relationships really quickly. That's the classic Plutonian toxic trait, and it's a big red flag for me. Mostly because it's happened a lot. She's also been accused of cheating and being manipulative. And the events that tend to pop up during this transit usually have the same qualities. In June 2018, film producer and notorious rapist Harvey Weinstein pled not guilty to sexual assault charges. Of course, he was convicted, but that conviction was overturned as Venus approached a square to Pluto in April of 2024. However, Venus-Pluto aspects often expose sexual violence, and Harvey Weinstein is now being investigated for a whole new set of violent sexual assaults. Then in July of 2016, a former Fox News anchor filed a lawsuit against Roger Ailes, the chairman of Fox News, which exposed a pervasive culture of misogyny, abuse, and sexual harassment. But it's not all bad. As I said, these disgusting acts often get exposed during Venus-Pluto transits, and then we have to address them. Addressing them raises awareness, and we can prevent further victimization through education. Teach your children well. Remember that old Crosby, Stills, Nash and Young song? But what does this mean for us right now? Number one, expect more fights over reproductive rights. We have Project 2025 looming, which espouses a total national abortion ban. These transits also tend to bring out more anti-trans and anti-LGBTQ propaganda. It's become so pervasive in the media, and the Republican Party has made it part of their platform to make trans people illegal. And, as I said earlier, these transits tend to expose sexual assault crimes, so keep your eyes on the news. Hopefully we don't see any more. But for you, stand up for yourself. And try your best not to fall back into the trap of control and manipulation. This is also a time when relationships can feel like a struggle to win or dominate each other. When going out and having fun, be careful. Watch your beverages. Don't drink out of any strange toilets. And try not to bring anyone home with you that you don't really know. Make sure to go places with friends. And if you do fall into a deviant romance, it's okay. Just keep your wits about you and mind those red flags. Remember, we don't fall in love. We grow into it. What we fall into is madness and codependency. Thank you for watching. Like this video and subscribe to my channel. Please also consider tipping me. You can give through Super Thanks below or use my PayPal link in the description. It helps me keep making such wonderful content. And remember, I do the best readings. It's science. You can book through my website, saturngirl.org, or contact me directly. All my info is below in the description. And remember, I love you. You're beautiful. And have a wonderful whatever it is you're having.